Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into a movie pretty much everyone has seen, but maybe haven't really seen Forrest Gump. On the surface, it's this sweet, feel good story, right? But it's also, I think, one of the most complicated and debated films of our time. So let's open up that box of chocolates and really see what's inside. My mama always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. You know the line. It's one of the most famous in movie history, and it's the perfect entry point for us. It just perfectly sums up the movie's whole vibe. Part simple wisdom, part complete random chance. It's the philosophy that our guy, Forrest, lives by. But that's the real question, isn't it? What is actually in that box? Is the movie just a simple, nostalgic treat, or is there something more complex, maybe even a little bitter hiding in there? Is it a political statement, a technical masterpiece, a story about trauma? Well, turns out it's all of those things. So, to figure it all out, we're going to peel back the layers of Forrest Gump, one by one. We'll start with that iconic feather, then we'll tag along on his tour through American history, uncover the movie's hidden technical magic, see how it literally jumped off the screen into the real world, and then we'll get into the big debate. Is it propaganda or just a heartwarming story? Finally, we'll look at why we're still talking about it today. All right, so first up, the basics. The film introduces us to Forrest Gump, a man with a low IQ, but, a huge heart. He just kind of drifts through his life, but somehow ends up shaping history along the way. And his story starts and ends with this one simple image. And right here, we hit the film's first really deep layer, dot feather. See, it's doing two things at once. For Forrest, it's about that big philosophical question. Are we in control or are we just floating around? Fate, first chance. But for Jenny, his childhood love who had a truly awful upbringing, that feather is her desperate wish to just escape, to be a bird and fly far, far away from all that pain. So this one single image, it holds the entire plot and the emotional heart of the movie. So from that single feather, the story just explodes outward. Forrest doesn't just live his own life. He sort of drifts through America's life. He becomes this accidental tourist in some of the most chaotic decades of the 20th century. The movie uses Forrest as this totally passive observer, weaving his personal story right into the fabric of the nations. From the rise of rock and roll and the civil rights movement, through the Vietnam War, political assassinations, Watergate, all the way to the AIDS crisis, Forrest is always there. He's like this innocent eye in the middle of a historical hurricane, which lets us look back at our own past without any cynicism. And the film shows us these connections happen almost by magic, just pure accident. Forrest doesn't try to change history. He's just there. And history changes around him. So a young guy boarding at his house, some dude named Elvis Presley, sees Forrest's awkward dance in his leg braces and turns it into a cultural revolution with those famous hips. Then, a few years later, he's a college football star meeting President Kennedy. But instead of some deep historical moment, we get pure, unfiltered Forrest. His biggest worry isn't world politics, it's the 15 Dr. Peppers he just downed. It's just a perfect example of his simple nature cutting right through all the pomp and circumstance. And it keeps happening. He becomes a ping pong champion, goes to China, and ends up on a talk show next to John Lennon. And Forrest's super simple, childlike description of a communist country with no possessions and no religion, well, it directly inspires the lyrics for one of the most famous songs ever written, Imagine. It's just wild. Okay, but putting Forrest into all these historical moments took a lot more than just clever writing. It took some serious technical wizardry, the kind of special effects that were so good you probably didn't even notice them. This right here is why the film won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects, beating out huge action movies. The goal wasn't to blow you away with explosions. It was to make the impossible feel completely and totally real, to blend fiction and facts so seamlessly you couldn't see the line. The effects in this movie were groundbreaking because you couldn't see them. The team flawlessly put Tom Hanks into old, grainy news footage, making him shake hands with presidents. They pioneered the tech to digitally erase Gary Sinise's legs, creating the unforgettable and totally convincing Lieutenant Dan. Even that feather floating in the wind or the crazy speed of the ping pong balls, that was all complex CGI. The real magic was making you forget you were watching magic at all. So the line between fiction and reality in Forrest Gump is already pretty blurry, but this is where things get genuinely strange. The movie's fiction didn't just copy life, it actually created it. So what's this number? 31? That's the number of Bubba Gump Shrimp Co. restaurants operating around the world today. I'm not kidding. A real global business that was born from a fictional promise between two buddies in a movie. Look at this timeline. The movie comes out in 1994. Just 2 years later, bam, the first restaurant opens. It was a huge hit, and now it's a massive chain. It just goes to show you the incredible cultural power of this film. A made-up shrimp company is now a real place you can go have dinner, from here to Japan.
All right, but for all its success and charm, we've got to get to the film's deepest, most controversial layer, its political message. For decades, people have been arguing about this. Is Forrest Gump an inspiring American tale, or is it basically conservative propaganda?
So on the one hand, you have the heartwarming take. It's a story where a simple guy succeeds through honesty, loyalty, and just doing what he's told. He plays football, joins the army, starts a business, becomes a millionaire. It's the American dream, right? But there's a much darker reading. In this view, Forrest is rewarded for his conformity, for never questioning authority. Meanwhile, Jenny, who joins the anti-war movement and explores the counterculture, she's punished with addiction, abuse, and ultimately a tragic death. And for a lot of viewers, Jenny is one of the most disliked characters in movies, period. They see her as selfish, she's always leaving Forrest, chasing self-destructive habits, and only seems to come back when her life is a mess. To many, she represents the failures of the whole 60s and 70s counterculture experiment. But there's a really powerful counterargument here, and it's that Jenny never thought she was good enough for Forrest. In this view, she isn't a villain, she's a victim. She was horribly abused as a child, and she spends her whole life running from that trauma. She pushes Forrest away not because she doesn't love him, but because she thinks she's too broken, too tainted for his pure, unconditional love. She's trying to protect him from her own pain. Her journey isn't a political statement. It's the tragedy of a woman who could never escape her own demons. So when you put all these layers together, the history, the tech, the real-world businesses, this huge ideological debate, you start to understand why this film has stuck around for so long. It's become this cultural touchstone that means something totally different to everyone who watches it. And get this, history once again had the final say in Forrest's story. A sequel was written, the script was completely finished, the screenwriter turned it in on September 10th, 2001. The very next day, the world changed. After 9/11, everyone involved, Tom Hanks, the director, the writer, they all agreed that the film's lighthearted, whimsical tone just didn't feel right anymore. And just like that, the project was canceled. And that brings us all the way back to Forrest's own final thought. I don't know if we each have a destiny, or if we're all just floating around accidental like on a breeze, but I think maybe it's both. The film doesn't give us a clean answer. It suggests that, maybe life isn't a simple choice between fate and chance. Maybe it's both things happening at the exact same time. So what is Forrest Gump? Is it a celebration of simple goodness, a conservative critique of the 1960s, a tragic love story, a technical showcase? The truth is, it's all of those things. It really is a box of chocolates, and its legacy is that we're all still talking about what we got. The next time you see that feather floating by, what will you think? Is its path written in the stars, or is it just the way the wind blew? Thanks for joining me for this one.